Should the group in season 2 of The Walking Dead have spent so much time looking for Sophia, or should they have given up on her as a lost cause? Welcome back to Lost in Games Unscripted, the series where I talk about whatever happens to come to mind at any given time. And today, that is season 2 of The Walking Dead, and specifically the search for Sophia, which takes up pretty much the first half of season 2. So the search for Sophia is a complicated one from a moral standpoint. Because on the one hand, especially when you think about it from a modern world, non-zombie apocalypse type of thing, right? When kids go missing, especially, when anybody goes missing, but especially kids, we pull out all the stops. We have huge searches. There have been documented huge cases, some of the biggest searches for missing people, especially in national parks and stuff like that when they go missing. You have like people flying helicopters and hundreds or thousands even of searchers going out looking for these missing people, right? And that makes a lot of sense in the modern world because that's kind of an important thing, right? If somebody goes missing and you want to go find them, they really shouldn't go missing in the first place, right? But in the zombie apocalypse, it's a little bit different. Because when somebody goes missing in the zombie apocalypse, especially in a forest or in a wooded area, a dense one where you have no experience, you've never been there before, all you're doing by sending more people out there, especially with such a small group, is risking other people's lives and risking other people getting lost. Now, we can start by looking at the fact, I will preface all of this with the fact that Rick never should have left her, okay? That is the absolute worst thing he could have done in that situation. It was mostly for drama in the show, but in a real life situation, you're in a zombie apocalypse, you got a little girl that just ran off in the woods, you catch up with her, you do not ever leave her. Full stop. You take her back to camp. I don't give a shit. Worst case scenario, if he had to like put her off to the side so he could deal with the two zombies, he had every possibility to deal with them in that moment while he was there. So that is first and foremost the thing. That should never have happened. But it did. Rick made a stupid choice. He left her there and she wound up wandering off. She got scared. Something happened. She walked off, right? Now the question becomes, do we start some kind of a search party, some kind of a search grid? How do we handle that? Now, from Carol's perspective, obviously, as the mother, she's not going to leave her daughter there. She doesn't want to just walk away from her daughter who's potentially lost and scared in the woods. And there is a potential that she could just be hiding somewhere else, right? So there is always that there. Realistically, even in the modern world, after a certain amount of time, and I think Rick brings this up, or Shane brings it up because he's trying to tell Rick, like, we know the odds here, we know the statistics, right? And within the first 72 to 96 hours, like realistically, if you haven't found them, especially a young child by that point, chances aren't great, and especially in a situation where you have zombies up and walking around. From a moral standpoint, we'll look at it from moral frameworks is what we tend to do here. Deontology. Always the first one we look at. The black and white moral system, you want to look out for everybody, you got to do the right thing. From a deontological standpoint, just leaving her out there, at initial glance, it could be looked at as, well, we owe it to, that is part of our moral obligation, that is part of our moral duty to ensure safety and to look out for everybody. Do no harm, but also try to minimize as much harm as possible. In this case, Carol is going to be harmed psychologically because her daughter is missing. Sophia, if we don't get to her in time, could be harmed. She could be killed. She could have an accident. Any number of things could happen, right? So we should maybe still keep looking for her for a set amount of time. But once you get past a certain amount of time, you got to recognize the fact that she's probably not alive. Something probably happened to her, right? From a utilitarian standpoint, the looking out for the overall good of the group, realistically, the best thing for the group is not to send people out, not to hurt, because every time you send people out there, you risk an accident. You risk somebody, even if you don't run into zombies, you risk twisting an ankle. You've got people out there in the woods walking around with guns, you risk somebody accidentally shooting somebody else, right? And you might think the likelihood of that is kind of low, but like realistically, if it's a zombie apocalypse, you're walking around in the woods looking for a little girl, you've got your gun by your side, you hear a noise, and maybe you quick quick panic because you don't want to get bit. You're worried. And so you just fire a shot and you wind up shooting somebody else. You didn't know one of your comrades was coming up on you, right? So from a utilitarian standpoint, searching for her past that first day is absolutely not the right thing to do. You know, you cannot risk the rest of the group for somebody who is statistically, even in the modern world, probably not alive after the first day or two, but especially in the zombie world. She's not, you know, it's pretty simple to say she's not alive, you know. And Shane, that's the difference, you know, one of the big differences between Rick and Shane is how they look at things. Shane looks at it from that standpoint and says, hey dude, we can't keep looking for her. We got to get moving. And Rick looks at it and says, well, but it's a little girl. You know, he comes at it from a more emotional standpoint. You know, it's Carol's daughter. We need to look for her. This is important to the group. And partially because for the mentality of the group, for the psychology of the group, they need that kind of win. They need to find her, right? That is something that keeps their hope alive and keeps them driving through. But, well, speaking of utilitarianism and people possibly being shot, we all know what happens when they're out there in the woods and it's Rick, Shane, and Carl finds, you know, they see the deer, and Carl winds up getting shot and he nearly loses his life. He would have died if not for a very specific set of circumstances, allowing Shane to get back and bring the stuff back so that Herschel could do the surgery on him, right? Carl would have died, and then you would have lost Sophia, you would have lost Carl. At that point, with Carl gone, Rick and Lori are going to have all kinds of problems. The group's going to fall apart. Like, Carol's daughter's gone. Rick and Lori would have lost Carl at that point. So now you've got both kids gone. You've got 3 people minimum that are going to be losing it. We see Daryl already starting to spin off because they can't find because they can't find Sophia, right? And especially after they find out that she was in the barn the whole time, like Daryl kind of like walks off and does his own thing. The group is slowly falling apart. If Carl had died, that group disintegrates. That group does not stay together. You know, at that point, I don't think Lori wants to live anymore, especially because of with the baby and everything. You know, she doesn't want to keep going. Rick, I think, would break down. I mean, we see him in season 3 in the prison when Lori dies. We see Rick go through the psychological break, and I think he would have gone through a very similar or worse break. Him and Lori were already strained. Shane was already going nuts on his own. If Carl dies, Shane goes crazy and says, look, I told you not to search for Sophia. Now Carl's dead because of you, because you made us go out there, right? And that breaks the group apart even more. Like, everything screams, don't search for this little girl. She's lost. She's out in the woods. She's probably dead. Let it go. But they didn't, and we saw how that turned out. But I want to know your thoughts in the comments below, as far as maybe this Sophia and Carl, and whether, because Carl's a whole nother topic of discussion that I'll probably make a video on, whether or not it was actually worth the supply run. You know, should they have just let Carl die? You know, there was a point where Lori, her big thing with talking to Rick when Carl was laying in she was like, maybe he wouldn't be better. Maybe he would be better off dying. Maybe this world is just something that I don't want him to go through this, you know. It's going to turn him into, who knows where it's going to wind up, right? So she hesitates and worries about that. And of course, Rick talks her down. He talks about the deer and everything, but like, that's a whole nother thing, whether or not a supply run like that would even be worth it. You know, we know Otis doesn't make it back. Very, very, it was close that both of them got killed, right? Shane and Otis both. And Shane at one point was telling Otis, take the gear and run. I'm going to stay behind. And so one of them wasn't going to make it back. If not, both of them weren't going to make it back. That could have been 2 more people lost. Like, it's always, in these survival situations, it's always a question of what to do and how to do it and the consequences of those actions. So there's a lot more to talk about with it all. But I don't want to make these videos too awful long, and I want to know what you guys think in the comments. What other moral decisions and type of things would you want to hear me talk about? I'm open to pretty much anything with the Walking Dead show. I've got the entire series I'm going through right now and kind of picking apart because I've got some future videos planned to talk more about the show. So let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like the video if you enjoyed it. And you can always join the Patreon and channel memberships, because those are things that help me keep the channel going and help me continue pushing forward and driving with all of this. But that's all I got for this one. I want to thank you all for watching. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.